Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. In this lesson, we delve into the complex dynamics of national differences in economic development, exploring the pivotal factors that shape a nation's economic trajectory. Through an insightful analysis of political and economic changes globally, I aim to provide a comprehensive understanding of how economies transition towards market-based system and the impact of these transitions and management practices across different national contexts. This exploration not only enhances our grasp of global economic disparities, but also equips us with the knowledge to navigate the intricacies of international business effectively. Let's get started. So our main lesson is focusing more on the national differences in economic development. So let's start with the learning outcomes. So at the end of this lesson, the student will be able to articulate the key factors that determine a nation's level of economic development. Second is identify and analyze the major political and economic changes occurring globally. Third, describe the process through which transition economies are shifting towards market-based system. Fourth is assessed. Fourth and the last one is assess the impact of national differences in political economy on management practices. Now let's start with differences in economic development. So the level of economic development. Well, economic development varies significantly across countries, as indicated by gross national income or GNI per capita. These measures um, reflects the total annual income of nation's residents and serve as a benchmark for economic activity. Now, the countries like the Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, the United States, and Australia are among the wealthiest, while large developing nations such as China and India are substantially poorer by these measures. So for the gross national income or GNI per capita, the GNI per capita is actually a critical factor or measure that represents the average income of country's citizens. It's used to categorize countries into different economic development levels. For instance, as of 2018, nations like Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, the United States, and Australia rank among the wealthiest when measured by GNI per capita, showcasing significant disparities in wealth and resources across countries. Now, compared to the large developing nations such as the China and India, are actually substantially poorer by the measure of GNI. So let's talk about the adjusting to for cost of living. So this is purchasing power party or parity, I'm sorry, or PPP. So GNI per capita does not account for living cost variations. Purchasing power parity or PPP adjustment provides a more accurate comparison of living standard by equalizing the purchasing power of different currencies to compare what is a certain amount of money can buy in different countries. So say for example, despite China's lower GNI per capita compared to the United States, its PPP adjustment indicates that Chinese citizen can afford a similar amount of goods and services as Americans relative to the cost of living. Now, the purchasing power parity or PPP, their GNI per capita does not account for cost of living differences across countries. PPP adjustments provide a more accurate reflections of living standards by comparing what people can buy with their income in their local environments. So this adjustment, is particularly relevant when comparing the living standard of countries with significant economic disparities, such as the contrast between the wealth of Switzerland and United States when adjusted for cost of living. Now let's talk about the economic growth rates. So when we talk about the economic growth rates are crucial for understanding economic development beyond static income measures. Rapidly growing economic like China and India, despite their current lower GNP per capita, represents the large and expanding markets for international business. Now, economic growth potential is a significant factor for international business strategies, highlighting the dynamic nature of global economic development. Now, understanding a country's economic growth rate is actually crucial, no, for gauging its development trajectory. Rapidly growing economies like the China and India, despite having lower GNI per capita compared to wealthier nations, represents dynamic markets with expanding opportunities for business and investment due to their large and growing economic output. Now let's take a look at this particular map. So this map present the global distribution of gross national income or GNI per capita for the for the year 2018. Now using a color-coded system to indicate the different income levels. Now the blue indicates low-income countries where GNI per capita is about $765 or less. This region represents the world's poorest economies where citizens earn the lowest income. Now, for green, color green, this represents the lower middle income countries with an GNI per capita ranging from 765 US dollars to 3,035. These economies are somewhat more developed than low income countries, but still face significant challenges in terms of economic development and living standards. The yellow shows upper middle income countries with a GNI per capita between 3,035 and $9,385. This category includes nations that have achieved a level of economic development that allows for more substantial domestic markets and better living conditions than lower income countries. The orange signifies lower high income countries with a GNI per capita from $9,385 to $20,000. These countries have a higher living standard and well-developed economies though they may not have the same income levels as the wealthiest nation. The red color denotes upper high income countries with a GNI per capita of 20,000 or from 20,001 and above or more. So these are the world's wealthiest economies with the highest living standard, the most developed markets, and the greatest economic complexity. Now, these maps provides visual differentiations of the countries based on their economic wealth, which is pivotal for understanding global economic disparities, assessing market potentials, and strategizing for international business operation. Now, let's talk about this table 3.1. Okay, so the GNI per capita 2018, as you can see, this is a dollar. So this column lists the gross national income per capita in current US dollars for each country. GNI per capita is the measures that reflects the average income of country's citizens and is indicative of the overall economic prosperity of the population. GNI PPP per capita 2018. So this shows the GNI per capita adjusted for purchasing power parity. PPP adjustment provides a more meaningful comparison of the living standards across countries as it accounts for the relative cost of living and inflation rates. For annual GDP growth rate for 2009 to 2018 in percentage, this percentage represents the average annual growth rate of the country's gross domestic product or GDP over the specified period. GDP growth rate is a key indicator of economic wealth, showing how quickly the economy is growing or contracting year over year. No? So the size of economy, the GDP of 2018 in dollar billion, this figure indicates the total market value of all the final goods and services produced within a country in a given year, giving a sense of the scale of the country's economy. Now, this table 3.1 offers economic data for a selection of countries highlighting differences in GNI per capita, adjusting for purchasing power, growth rates, and overall economy size. So Brazil, as you can see, shows GNI per capita of 9,140, which adjusts to $15,820 with PPP, indicating a lower cost of living or greater local purchasing power. The annual GDP growth rate is modest to 1.2% with a total economy size of 1.868 trillion dollars. China has a GNI per capita of 9,470, but with PPP adjustment it's to $18,140, reflecting a significant difference in due to lower living costs. China has experienced substantial economic growth with a 8.0% annual GDP growth rate, and its economy size is massive at 13.608 trillion. Imagine that. So for Germany, with a high GNP per capita of $47,450 and an even higher PPP adjustment figures of $55,800, shows a strong economy with a lower growth rate of 1.3%, no? And a total economy size of $3.998 trillion. Furthermore, India's GNP per capita is 2020, which is significantly enhanced to $7,680 when adjusted for PPP. Now, highlighting the low cost of living, the economy has been growing rapidly at the 7.1% annual rate, with a GDP size of 2.726 trillion dollars. Japan, on the other hand, has a GNP per capita of $41,340 with a PPP adjustment of $45,000, showing less disparity due to the cost of living adjustments. The growth rate is low at 0.7% with a large economy size of $4.970 trillion. Furthermore, Nigeria's GNP per capita is low at 1,960 with a PPP of $5,700, indicating a substantial adjustment for local purchasing power. Its GDP grows at 4.2%. Is it correct? Yeah, 4.2% annually, with a smaller economy size of $397 billion. Poland, moreover, has a GNI per capita of $14,150 and a PPP of $31,110, reflecting a moderate cost of living. The growth rate stands at 3.5% with a economy size of $586 billion. Now, Russia's GNP per capita of 10,230 jumps to $26,470 after PPP adjustment with a steady growth rate of 0.9% and economy size of 1.658 trillion. You know, Switzerland boast very high GNI per capita of 83,500 $80, with a slightly lower PPP of 69,220. The growth rate is steady at 1.5% with an economy size of $706 billion. The United Kingdom shows a GNI per capita of $41,330 and a PPP, I'm sorry, of $45,660. So indicating a high standard of living. Now, the economy grows at a rate of 1.3% with a total GDP size of 2.825 trillion. The United States finally has the highest GNI per capita on the list, which is 62,850, almost equal to its PPP of $63,390. The annual GDP growth rate is 1.8% with the largest economy size of 20.494 trillion. Now, these figures provides insight into not only the wealth of the nation, but also how the wealth translates into purchasing power and economic stability, which are key consideration for international business and trade. Let's continue. Now, the broader conception of development, which is the Amartya Sen. Okay. All right. So now, beyond material wealth, Amartya Sen acquires, I'm sorry, argues. So Amartya Sen argues for assessing development not just by material output, example, the GNI per capita, but by the capabilities and opportunities people have. Now, development in sense view is about expanding real freedoms and removing obstacles such as poverty, tyranny, and lack of economic opportunities. Nobel laureate. This is how it sounds. Yeah, that's the correct name. That's the full name. Nobel laureate Amartya Sen argues that development should extend beyond the material wealth to include a broader range of freedoms and capabilities. So, this perspective emphasizes that economic development should be assessed not just by the income levels or material output, but the opportunities and capabilities available to individuals, such as the access to education and healthcare. So, for healthcare and education, San emphasizes the importance of basic healthcare and education as foundations, of for developing capabilities. These are not only instrumental in achieving higher income levels, but also valuable in their own right for enabling individuals to lead healthier, more informed lives. Now, Sen's approach shifts from focus of economic growth to enhancing human capabilities. He advocates for removing barriers to freedom like poverty, lack of education, and restricted access to healthcare, arguing that development involves expanding the choice available to people so they can lead lives they have and the value as well. So that's the view of Martha Sen. All right. So for the broader conception of development, this is still from Amartya Sen. All right. So what's the influence? Okay, what's the influence on Human Development Index or HDI on Amartya Sen view? Amartya Sen. So Sen's ideas have influenced the creation of Human Development Index or HDI by the United Nations. The HDI measures life expectancy, education, and income levels to provide a broader view of human development beyond economic indicators alone. Now, Sen's ideas significantly influenced the development of the Human Development Index or HDI by the United Nations. The HDI measures countries based on life expectancy, education levels and income per capita. So this index aligns closely with SenseView by offering a more nuanced picture of development that goes beyond mere economic metrics to consider health, knowledge, and living standard. Now let's talk about the political economy and economic progress. Now, the relationship between the political economy and economic progress is a complex and multifaceted alone. Often debated among academics and policymakers, the underlying notion is that the political, economic, and legal system of countries are tightly interwoven with its overall economic development. In this section, we will explore how these systems work together as to facilitate or hinder economic progress and the role of innovation and entrepreneurship as critical engines for growth. We delve into the necessary conditions that foster innovation, including the type of economy and political system that importance and the importance of strong property rights. Moreover, we examine the concept that economy's progress can lead to developmental of democratic institutions shaping the landscape of international business and management practices. Now let's take a look at the innovation and entrepreneurship are the engines of growth. Now, why is it called that? So innovation and entrepreneurship are the acknowledged acknowledged by economists as the primary drivers of long-term economic growth. So these concepts are broadly defined to include not just new products, but also the let's see new products, but also new processes, organizations, management practices, and strategies. Now, for example, Uber's business model and Amazon's online retailing platform. Okay. So, are innovations that disrupted their respective industries. These activities create new markets and products that they did not previously exist, enhancing economic activity. They also lead to increase productivity of labor and capital, further stimulating economic growth. So, example, the US firms like Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon serve as archetypal examples where entrepreneurial activities have led to significant innovations, creating substantial economic value and enhancing productivity. Now, let's talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, which requires a market economy. Now, a market economy provides the economic freedom that fosters innovation and entrepreneurship more than a planned or a mixed economy. Now, individuals in a market economy are free to start businesses and innovate with the potential to earn profits if successful. Okay, so this freedom acts as a powerful incentive for development of new ideas and technologies. Now, in contrast, planned economies where the state owns production means offer limited incentives for innovation, leading to economic stagnation. This is exemplified by the economic challenges faced by many former communist states. Now, let's talk about the innovation and entrepreneurship or the engines of growth. I think we already done this. Second. Yep, we're done with this. Okay, let's proceed to, yeah. All right, let's proceed to innovation and entrepreneurship requires strong property rights. Now, for innovation and entrepreneurship to thrive, a system of strong property rights is essential. These rights ensures that entrepreneurs can reap the rewards of their innovations and are protected against theft and exploitation. These particular section, might give an example of countries with strong intellectual properties laws that have become hubs of innovations like the United States, where Silicon Valley's success is partly attributed to a legal framework that protects innovation. Now, the required political system. There's actually a debate, about the type of political system that best supports a market economy and strong property rights. While Western governments have also successfully fostered market economies and property rights, leading to rapid um, economic growth, as seen in countries like China and Singapore. However, the argument is made that democratic regimes are more conducive to long term economic growth since they ensure the security of property rights and are less likely to appropriate wealth for the private ends of a ruling elite. Okay, let's talk about the. Okay, we're done with that. Okay, let's move on to the last political economy and economic progress, which is the economic progress begets democracy. Now, while democracy may not be necessary for initial economic progress, there is observed trend where economic growth often leads to establishment of more democratic regimes as witnessed in South Korea and Taiwan. Western governments sometimes overlook human rights violation in growing economies like the China, with the expectation that economic progress will eventually lead to democratic society with an individual freedom. Now, states in transition, the spread of democracy. So, before discussing the spread of democracy, now states in transition, such as those moving from centralized to market based economies, are undergoing profound changes in their political and economic structures. These transitions are critical for setting a solid foundation for economic progress and development. No, the subtopics presented here will delve into the dynamics of these transitions and their broader implications. So let's start with the spread of democracy. Now, the global trend has been a shift toward democratic governance, with many states transitioning from autocratic to totalitarian regime to democracies. Democracies tend to encourage the free flow of information, accountability, and greater respect for individuals' rights, all of which are conducive for economic development. Now, a notable example of this trend can be observed in transformation of many Eastern European nation, sorry, that shifted from communist regime to democratic governments. These changes have often lead to liberalization and integration into global economy, as seen in the case of Poland, which has developed into a democratic state with growing market economies since the fall of communism. The next is the New World Order, a global terrorism. Now, the end of the Cold War brought a new world order characterized by the absence of bipolar division of the world and the rise of new economic powers. Global terrorism has become a significant concern impacting international relations and economic stability. Now, states transitioning to democracy and market economies must navigate these global challenges while ensuring the domestic stability and security. A pertinent example for this is the impact of global terrorism on the international relation and economic stability, exemplified by the events of 9/11 and the subsequent global war on terror. Now, these events have significantly influenced global politics and economic decisions, highlighting the complexity of international business in a world where geopolitical stability can be shifty, appended by terrorist acts. Now, let's take a look at on the nature of economic transformation. The regulation. So these refers, but before discussing the regulation, I'm sorry, the nature of the economic transition or transformation is actually pivotal aspect of modern economic discourse, particularly as it pertains to the shift from command to market-based system. Now, this process typically involves a series of critical steps: the regulation that I'm going to discuss later, which reduces government intervention in the market; privatization, which transfers state-owned asset to private entities; and the establishment of a robust legal system to protect property rights. Together, these changes aim to unleash the forces of the market, spurring efficiency and encouraging economic growth. Now let's talk about the regulation. The regulation refers to the reducing of eliminating or elimination of government power in a particular industry, usually enacted to create more competition within the industry. This actually involves removing legal restrictions on the free play of markets, the establishment of private enterprises, and the operations of such enterprises. Now, historically, by the way, command economies had very strict, no control over prices and outputs. The and private enterprise was largely prohibited. The regulation removed these controls, allowing market forces to determine prices and production levels. This shift often led to the abolition of laws that inhibited the formation and operation of private enterprises, as well as the relaxation of removable restriction and foreign investment and the international trade. Now, example for this, the prime example of the regulation is actually India, which over the past 2 decades has significantly lifted controls on its economy, resulting in a surge of economic activity and foreign investment. Next is privatization. Privatization is transfer of ownership and property of business from a government to a privately owned entity. It actually works alongside the regulation to foster economic efficiency by motivating new private owners with a potential for profit. Now, it actually began earnest with the Thatcher administration in UK during the 1980s with the sale of British Telecom. This process was not just about transferring state assets, but also ensuring, the that these industries operated under competitive market conditions to avoid creating private monopolies. So the trend spread globally with thousands of privatization occurring worldwide, notably in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. Now, in the Czech Republic, for example, privatization helped the rise of private sector's GDP contribution from 11% to 60% between 1989 and 1985. Brazil as well and India, Saudi Arabia are contemporary example where significant privatization efforts are underway. Although the approach varies by countries, such as China's mixed ownership strategy. Last one is legal system. Legal system in the context of market economies is codified set of laws that protect the private property rights and facilitate the enforcement of contracts. Now, a well-functioning market economy depends on a robust legal system that safeguards property rights and provides the means of contract enforcement. So, without legal protection, the incentive for individuals and business to engage in economic activity diminish as there is a higher risk of expropriation by private or public entities. The collapse of communism in Eastern Europe highlighted this necessity of establishing such legal frameworks. So, although progress has been made, there are still challenges such as the uncertain property titles and the underdeveloped mechanism for resolving dispute outside the court. Now, the effectiveness of legal system is pivotal for economic activity and foreign investment. Incomplete or inadequate legal frameworks can lead to a substantial reduction in economic engagement due to the increased risk of uncertainty for business operation. Best example for this is the best example of development of legal system can be seen in China, where economic reforms have included efforts to strengthen property rights and improve the legal enforcement of contracts, although, challenges remain. Now, what's the implication of the changing political economy? First is decrease in ideological conflicts. Of course, the 20th century ideological conflict between collectivism and individualism has diminished. Western ideology, particularly market capitalism, has spread more widely since the Cold War. Second is opening of previously inactive, inaccessible markets. So markets in Eastern Europe, Latin America, and Africa and Asia that were once closed to Western businesses are now open, though still developing. China and India, on the other hand, with their vast population, represent enormous potential markets. Next is the economic growth and market potential. Now, despite lower living standard, the significant population size in transitioning economies suggests a vast upside potential for businesses. If growth rates are sustained, China could become the world's largest national economy within the 2 decades. Imagine that. Next is associated risk with new markets. Of course, political stability in newer democratic states is not guaranteed, especially in the face of economic challenges. Authoritarianism and non-communist totalitarian regime could emerge. Fifth is shift from bipolar to a multipolar world. So the the end of the Cold War's bipolar division might lead to a multipolar world with various dominant civilization. Conflicts between civilization could impede the economic benefits expected from the global shift towards market-based system. So lastly is the financial system concern. China's financial system lacks transparency, raising concerns about non-performing loans. Potential financial crisis could severely, impact growth rates and investment returns. So, in summary, this lesson actually provides an in-depth examination of global economic development variations, highlighting the significance of gross national income or GNI per capita, purchasing power parity or PPP, and economic growth rates. It actually explores Amartya Sen's broader development concept, focusing on capabilities and opportunities. The political economy's role, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and the essentiality of market economies with robust property rights are discussed. So it delves into the political economy's evolutions, democracy's rise, and the challenges transitioning states face moving from centralized to market-based system. So this analysis offers a nuanced understanding of economic development's complexity and the interplay between political, legal, and economic frameworks. So that's it for today's discussions. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to stay updated with my latest video. So our next topic will delve into the difference in culture, providing more insightful discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everyone.